Refugees from reality. That's the focus of tonight's Angle. The scenes out of Israel and Gaza are heart-wrenching. Whatever caused the horrific explosion in that Gaza hospital, it's only going to add to the larger humanitarian crisis that's already occurring. Of course, Hamas started this with its brazen and barbaric attacks. Its leaders wanted to change the dynamic in the Middle East. They didn't care how many children they had to murder along the way to do that. Nor did they care about the devastation they knew would be triggered in Gaza with the predictable Israeli response. So Hamas is looking now for a propaganda victory from the international media that will portray any Israeli countermeasure as disproportional. But as this unfolds, what about our role? Look, Americans are smartly and overwhelmingly standing with the people of Israel. But we also have to understand and avoid unintended consequences and ask now, not later, what are the true costs of America's involvement, direct involvement, in another war in the Middle East? Now, Biden's about to ask Congress for a supplemental $100 billion aid package. I just mentioned to Senator Rubio. For both Ukraine and Israel, they throw in a little for our border here. Of course, that's money that we don't have. They shouldn't be tethered together, those requests. And it's money that we're going to have to borrow or print to pay out. But the money for weapons and humanitarian assistance, that's just the beginning of what the globalists want American taxpayers to cover here.
Should Arab countries be taking on the lion's share of the burden to absorb what could be over 1 million, if not more, refugees from Gaza?
I think there's something to be said about the region's partners being able to support and step up Palestinians. However, that does not abdicate the United States from our historic role that we've played in the world of accepting refugees and allowing people to restart their lives here.
Yeah. AOC and others, including Bush Republicans, have long believed that it is America's obligation to take in as many Palestinian refugees as we can. Now, I know what you're saying. Why should we take them? Don't we have our own problems with our own open border? And why wouldn't those individuals go to countries close to their native land? They're all valid points. But modern-day multiculturalism, we have to understand, we see it everywhere we go. It's been a colossal failure in the United States. And probably because somewhere along the line, the melting pot gave way to self-loathing and critical race theory. If we teach our kids that America is a rotten racist country, and if our president says that our nation is filled with MAGA hatred, then why would Muslims or any new immigrants want to assimilate here? But the truth is the Biden administration has green-lighted the admission of a total of 186,000 refugees from all over the world. 11,411 in 2019, 25,465 in 2022, 60,000 so far this year. But to that number, add almost 90,000 Afghan refugees from that disastrous Afghan withdrawal. The vetting of these people is non-existent. Some are I'm sure, are wonderful people, and some really helped us, and they should be placed on a priority list for coming into the United States with proper vetting. But look, both Republicans and Democrats along the way, they, believe that the American people are obligated to foot the bill for the crisis caused by their own poor wartime leadership. There's been a bipartisan obsession with flooding America with refugees. George W. Bush allowed in a staggering 381,802. Obama, a mind-blowing 557,000. And 4 years, Trump allowed in 118,000 or so, far more reasonable, but still far too many. Now, some refugees are true refugees. They really need help, and we can make the argument that they should be here. But right now, with the problems the United States is facing, we simply don't have the capacity in our cities or our local budgets to cover what is an exploding cost of educating, feeding, and clothing people in those gargantuan numbers. Now, this is the breakdown for this fiscal year alone. Syria and Afghanistan, check those numbers out. Countries that are hotbeds of terrorism. Again, 10,000, almost 6,500. Who's doing the vetting? And Progressive Caucus radical Jamal Bowman says that we need even more than that. He says we should prepare to welcome refugees from Palestine while being very careful to vet and not allow in members of Hamas. Yeah, we trust that. Now, we have to recognize that we live in a country where the rich and the powerful believe that we owe a moral obligation to the rest of the world. Of course, the rich and powerful, they're not going to pay that obligation. They will not suffer any of the consequences of the endless sacrifices that they ask of the rest of the people to make. But unless we stop them by beating them in an election after election, they're going to keep demanding that the people sacrifice for their mistakes, no matter the cost. And that's The Angle.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.